I'm Sarah Burke, and this is the Women in Media Podcast. Today's episode is presented by Knix in partnership with Monday Girl. This summer, we threw a little event bringing together the Monday Girl, Knix, and Women in Media communities for this conversation with a live audience, recorded at the Knix Store on Queen Street West in Toronto. And let me tell you about today's guest. She is a former professional hockey player who has made it her mission to spark change, push limits, break barriers, and create a more equitable future for hockey. She's a member of the Professional Women's Hockey League's broadcasting team, and she's also the league's manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Throwing it back to an exclusive live tape recording of the Women in Media podcast in partnership with Knix and Monday Girl, here's my conversation with Saroya Tinker.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How are you today? This is like a weird time. You don't have too much going on. What was the day like today?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Just doing some league stuff. We just finished up with the draft and awards. So those who don't know, we're in off season right now. And for me, that's a thank goodness moment for sure.
So the draft, there was a time where professional women's hockey was a little bit of a mess. Now there is one singular league. I remember hearing you talk about this on another podcast, saying, the moment that we don't have to think about side hustles anymore, that's when things are going to be real. Could you reflect a little bit on the PWHL and how far things have come since, I think that recording was in 2022?
Yeah, so I think just within the last year or so, we formulated one league. So we had the PWHPA and the PHF, and we formed one league. Billie Jean King and the Walter Group were able to acquire both of the leagues and form the PWHL, which we have now. So with that, everyone is paid a living wage, which is what we were aiming for.
Round of applause. We love this. You don't need a side hustle anymore.
Exactly. So these women get to focus and solely be professional athletes. And for myself, I was supposed to be on PWHL Ottawa and make my way to Ottawa, but decided 4 days before training camp that I was going to retire and be a member of the broadcast team and start my career.
So I want to actually talk to you about that decision to retire. I've had to make decisions to walk away from things that I was very passionate about in my life too. And did you have any sort of apprehension about retiring, or was it, no, I want to take things in a different direction? Like, what made that decision for you?
Yeah, I think I've always had my challenges in hockey. As a Black woman, I haven't always fit into the spaces, so I think it's come with its challenges in that sense. But I made sure to give it my all that last summer, which is why I retired 4 days before camp. I wanted to make sure that I left everything out, and I was just going to go with the feeling that I felt in that moment, and that was to give it up and focus on helping hockey in a different way, and have a seat at the table in the biz ops community now, and make sure other Black women are able to play in the league and able to access the game of hockey. But I realized that my playing days were done. I was content with that. I played on the Toronto Six last season, so we won the Isabel Cup. So going out on a championship, so I felt okay.
What about cracking the mic for the first time? So you would have been interviewed as a player, especially with all the spotlight on what's been going on with these, now one league, but previously two different leagues. Reflect on what it's been like being on the mic in a different way. Is it like a broadcaster now? How was that?
It's been an incredibly smooth transition. I don't think I realized how much I knew about hockey. Obviously, I can hop out there and play, but when you have to verbalize it to millions who are watching the game, I think it's a little different. But I was so nervous. If I'm being completely honest, I could not give, when I was in college, I could not give a 10-minute presentation when I was at Yale. And I would always be so nervous. And now I get up and do public speaking for a living. So I think it's proof to do things that scare you. But at the same time, that January 1st game, sitting at the desk on panel, I was super nervous, but ready and prepared to talk about all my friends and former teammates, as there's 168 players in the league, and I think I've played with 148, so it made it easy to talk about them.
and that's something that, the National Hockey League can't really say. So let's back it up a little bit. For those in the room that maybe don't know your backstory, Oshawa is where you grew up. Anyone from Oshawa in the house? Come on.
It's
really?
Okay. You don't have to admit it. I don't often either.
Okay. What about, we'll call them Eastenders. Any Eastenders? Scarborough? Okay. There we go. We got one. Can you talk about like when sports became a passion for you? Because I know you played so many sports. We should, instead of me saying, which sports did you play? We should say, which did you not play?
Yeah. I played everything I could get my hands on. I mean, I started out in gymnastics and dance and was very quickly too tall to do that. So my dad put the hockey skates on me, but I played high level basketball and soccer in high school as well. But hockey was what afforded me the opportunities to have everything that I have today. I mean, I was offered an Ivy League scholarship to attend in the 10th grade, so I figured I might as well choose hockey.
My 10th grade looked a little different. I was competitive dancing, though, and I thought one thing that you and I would definitely be able to touch on is just, and I feel like this is perfect for a brand like Knix that's supporting this live tape today. You know, body image is a hard thing, especially growing up. I don't know about you, but I didn't really understand. I knew that I felt better in certain dance costumes than others, but I didn't really understand like what was actually going on, especially being so tall growing up. How did you navigate through that as like a preteen or a young girl?
Well, I think I lacked a lot of confidence. I mean, I was dominating in every sport.
Yeah.
And, I think everyone automatically thinks you should have confidence because of that. But fun fact, they called me Big Bird at school. They did. I had these yellow high top shoes that I liked to wear, and they called me Big Bird. So I was always very tall, very insecure in my own body. And I mean, playing sports, I fluctuate between like 40 pounds. I can be a great, amazing hockey player, and 40 pounds less, I can go run 10K. So in that sense, I've seen my body fluctuate so much. And I love it when it's 145 and I hate it when it's 190.
That's the message right there.
But that's an issue, obviously, because it can do all the same things at either one of those weights. So
it's almost like, look what my body can do. Look at all these amazing things. And like we constantly have to flip the script, I find, as women in that sense. Is there something that you would tell young women who are worried about what they look like instead of, say, the sport that they're playing?
Yeah, I think focus on all that your body can do. I mean, it gave me a scholarship. It let me play professional hockey. It let me make money playing my sport. So I think there are so many things that your body can do, even though you may look in the mirror and not like it. But at the same time, I tell my girls, the girls that I mentor, that they've got to be unapologetic about who they are. And I mean, I try to post on Instagram, not fake stuff. I mean, I love the videos where it's real. Like, this is my body pose and this is it. 2 seconds later, just slouch down. Yeah. So I think paying attention to who they follow on social media and the posts they interact with. But social media is huge, and I think that that's a big piece that I've had to unfollow people and things like that. But yeah.
So is there like a limit you put on yourself with social media, or like how do you keep that healthy? Because I think that's something that I think about what my life would have been like if there was social media when I was in high school. And luckily there was just the internet period at that time. Like dial up. I remember like, you know, using the phone line for hours and hours. But you know, if there were Instagram posts going out in real time during class, and I know there's talk of there not being allowed social media in certain school boards now, whether we're talking Canada or the US. How do you sort of separate online life from real life?
I mean, if I'm being completely transparent right now, I post and I get off.
Me too,
That's kind of my strategy right now, or else I find myself on there scrolling and comparing, or, I mean, at the least, it's just being like, oh, I should make a video like this, and that's work for me.
Yes,
so at the same time, I think that I've had to take a step back and not focus so much on that, but yeah, it's post and get off. Unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I understand that. So let's go back to Yale for a little bit. You know, you had this, we'll call it Oshawa upbringing, and then you end up down in, that's Connecticut, right?
Yeah, New Haven, Connecticut.
What was it like, culture shock being down there? Because like as a Canadian girl growing up, I would probably be like, what?
For sure. I mean, I think right off the bat, I was super intimidated in all the classes that I was in. I mean, there were people interning at Google and NASA. People saying words you have no idea what they mean, but those people actually don't know what they mean either. So that was good to know after a while, but it was very intimidating being there.
So it was like a keep your head down, study hard. You studied, I feel like I read there was something science, there was something history and public health.
Yeah, it was history, science, medicine, and public health. So my first 2 years I was pre-med, and then I realized it was too much with hockey. But if I was using my degree now, I'd be in medical devices or like pharmaceutical sales, something along those lines.
Interesting. And this is all like kind of as COVID is bubbling up, right?
Yes. Exactly. I graduated 2020, so we were sent home my spring break and told not to come back to campus. So I finished my last 2.5-3 months online, but graduated right at the great time for most people. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, leadership. You've found leadership, or did leadership find you? I guess I'll ask you that. But you're leading a lot in your life right now, whether we're talking about Black Girl Hockey Club or in what you're doing with the league.
Yeah, I think leadership found me. I think in the back of my head, I always knew I was a leader, but I wasn't always able to lead in the way that I wanted to in hockey specifically. Hockey is a very white space. I mean, hockey's expensive to play. The game isn't accessible. For those who don't know, out of those 168 players that are playing in the PWHL, there are 3 Black women. So in that sense, that's all these little Black girls have for representation. So I think the leadership piece found me. My senior year at Yale, a freshman came in by the name of Kirsten Good, and she just graduated 2 weeks ago, so I'm super proud of her. But that was the first Black player I'd ever played with in my entire career. And she made me realize the importance of representation and how I can impact her moving forward. She was like my sister right off the bat, and instead of when I would hear ignorant things in the dressing room, I was able to just internalize it, look up at her, and laugh it off, whereas before it was just building up as anger inside. So I would say the leadership part found me because I needed to find a new purpose in playing when I decided to play professionally.
I'm wondering if you're comfortable to share a moment where you had to stand up for yourself, like where you really got to exercise empowerment, maybe.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this came in the height of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the Black killings that we saw in the U.S. I mean, I had never really used my platform, but I realized as a professional athlete that I had a platform. And in my first professional game, I kneeled for the anthem. And I received a lot of hatred, but at the same time, I was standing up for things that I had experienced in my sport since I was 6 or 7 years old and playing. So I think I decided to make a stance there and continuing to do that ever since.
You shared a post yesterday. We're recording this one day after Father's Day. The message from your dad growing up, it was something along the lines of prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Essentially. Talk about your dad's influence on how you approach these racial incidents.
Yeah, that was actually from my first racial incidents that I had ever had. I mean, I was around the age of 12 or 13. I was in the dressing room. I was playing for Clarington, so Curtis, Bowmanville area. And we were all just joking around the dressing room. I stood up to say my piece, and my teammate responded to me and said, "Shut up, you stupid," and proceeded to call me the N-word. And at that point, I'm 12, 13. I didn't really know how to handle that. And I ran out of the room and found my dad. And he told me that there's going to be a lot of people in this sport that don't think that I belong, and that I'm just going to have to continue to prove them wrong. So in that sense, that lives within me, is just to prove people wrong day in and day out, whether they think I belong in the arena or not.
Have you run into any of those people from way back when who can see you now?
Yes, most definitely. I think when I started to share my story, I received a lot of apologies from teammates that I had when I was 12. So as surprising as it was, I think it was exciting to see that they knew that they had done that and were going to actually acknowledge it, because they personally sent me those DMs, those text messages. So I was excited that they were learning, but at the same time, it definitely didn't change the fact that they're the reason I am having to tell these stories.
Well, I would almost say that all the good and all the bad in our careers makes us who we are right now, right? Sitting here in the Knix store on Queen Street West with a live audience telling stories. And I'm wondering if there is a moment that sticks out as a defining moment in your career.
Yeah, I think the time whether I was going to decide to play professionally or not. It was my last game I had just played. We went into triple overtime against Harvard, and I thought it was the last game of my hockey career. I didn't really anticipate playing professionally. And
Wait, I'm going to stop you. Why? Why did you think that?
Well, at that time, the PWHL was a league, and all transparency, my first contract was for $5,000. So with that, I definitely didn't anticipate playing professional hockey, and I was drafted to the New York team at the time, but the reason I had chosen to sign that contract was because I had a job in medical devices in New York City. So I was going to have to work outside of playing. But I didn't want to play professional hockey. I felt like my time was up. I didn't really want to be associated with the sport in that realm anymore. But at the same time, I think moving forward and realizing the representation I could have, I needed to play with a new purpose. And that was a defining moment, was me deciding to play pro, because I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be working in pharma. So
it's pretty wild to think about. Do you think that all of this leads to Black Girl Hockey Club? I mean, it has to, really. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me about the beginning of Black Girl Hockey Club?
Yeah, for sure. So I was struggling my senior year, and my mom, like any mom does, was reaching out, trying to find groups and organizations on campus or around that I could get involved in. And she found Black Girl Hockey Club. So Black Girl Hockey Club was originated in California as a nonprofit, and they were having a Black Girl Hockey Club meetup. And I couldn't go. I was playing at school, but my mom took my brothers. And that's where she met Renee. Renee Hess is the founder of Black Girl Hockey Club. And right from there, I started volunteering on the scholarship committee. It was my source of joy that year, seeing all these little Black girls want to play hockey, and we were able to give them the funds to be able to do so. And then my first year playing professionally, we had an organization that wanted to support our league, and our league had said no. And honestly, I didn't really think much of it, but I took to Twitter. I just tweeted and said, "We don't want your support." And got brutally attacked on Twitter. But at the same time, it allowed me to have the platform that I do now.
I was going to say, that's what Twitter's... All the haters are on Twitter out of all the platforms. Exactly. Do we like Twitter? Are we on Twitter? X?
I don't know.
Okay, mixed reviews in the crowd. Okay.
But anyways, I wanted to raise $5,000 for the scholarship committee, and I ended up raising $35,000. So with that, I decided to start Black Girl Hockey Club Canada. I'm the executive director, and we flourish up here in Canada. Obviously, hockey's Canada's game, so there was a lot open for me up here, but at the same time, super happy to be able to have that access for the Black girls up here in Canada as well.
So talk about some of the people that you collaborate with Black Girl Hockey Club. You know, you got some big names involved.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jumpstart is our main founding partner. We give out scholarships and financial aid. We just announced our partnership with Sarah Nurse. We have Nursey Night, so we're able to fly girls into the city. They stay downtown at a hotel, get to watch her play and get to meet her afterwards. I have my mentorship program, Saroya Strong, so that I have about 250 girls all across North America in my mentorship program. We run community events. We link up at NHL games, PWHL games, and it's really just a space for Black women to come that love hockey and feel like they're included. No, you don't have to play high-level hockey. No, you don't have to know how to skate. You just have to want to come and be interested in the sport and meet other cool Black girls that like hockey.
So, you know, here I am, white girl sitting next to you. And like, this is something that I care about so much. If I was going to ask you, or anyone in the room who maybe isn't Black but wants to get involved, like what's the answer there? How can we help?
I think just come hang out. I mean,
it's open.
Yeah, we want our allies to come and support us. I mean, I think the more diverse faces we see in there, the more comfortable everyone feels.
Yeah.
And we created the space because Black women didn't feel comfortable in hockey, not so that we could exclude anyone else, but simply because we didn't have a space where we could come and feel safe. So in that sense, we talk about our hair care, but there's a wide range of things, and we always want our allies to come and join us.
What's one thing that you wish that other women who have not had the Black experience would understand?
Geez, I think just the spaces that Black women have to shrink themselves to fit into. I mean, I always get the comment, "You're too much." And my response is, go find less. But at the same time, I think you're too loud. You're the angry, aggressive Black woman. And it's I don't think that you should have to shrink yourself to fit into a space.
Can you tell me about an impact you've had on a young up-and-coming player? Like, I mean, you talked about the gal that just graduated, but is there, like, how young do you have to be to show up with like Black Girl Hockey Club?
So I would say I started mentoring obviously in 2020 when I graduated, but my first ever mentee, Dayton O'Donoghue, she grew up in the city, and her parents needed help affording her playing, and there was this one tournament growing up that I always wanted to go to. It was in Florida. All my teammates always went, but my parents could never afford to send me. And this tournament still goes on to this day. So it was 2 years ago that I sent her to this tournament in Florida, and she has great grades, gets straight A's, but was for some reason just not being noticed. And she had received some D3 offers, but when she went to this camp, it actually turned out that somebody had just decommitted from Dartmouth. Their grades couldn't get them in, and Dartmouth offered her a spot, and she's currently a freshman at Dartmouth right now. So
round of applause. I love this. I love that. And like with so many girls, you said there's 250?
Yes.
How does the communication happen in the community?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. I don't have just like this set PDF that I send all the girls or anything like that, but I think it's open accessibility to myself and my network. For me growing up, I mean, hockey is such an exclusive sport. If you do not have the networking and the connections to get you there, you just simply won't make it. So even me knowing coaches and contacting coaches for these girls, but honestly, it's open access to me. They are all in my favorites. Yes, sometimes I get phone calls at 11 p.m. They're crying, to be honest, but at the same time, it's letting them know that I'm here for them.
Right.
Obviously, I do work and whatnot, but they know that I'm an open contact at piece for them, that they can use me whenever they need. And I mean, some girls use it all the time. Some girls meet with me weekly. Some girls text me daily. And then other girls meet with me once every 2 months, once a month. And it's just however they want to use it.
What's the best piece of advice that someone gave you when you were in their shoes growing up?
I think be the person that you needed. I think that that's exactly what I aim to do. I never felt like I had that person that I could turn to and ask those questions of. And I see how I'm that person for the other girls, and it inspires me to just continue to do what I'm doing.
Okay, let's talk about self-care, because I think women in all different fields right now are hustling so hard. And sometimes it is a side hustle and then a full-time hustle on top of everything. So what does downtime look like for you? Like, especially if we're in the middle of a season, for example, whether we're talking you were playing hockey or you're broadcasting, what do you do to kind of disconnect, take care of you?
That's a really good question, because I think I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Me too.
I think since retiring, I mean, that's everyone's big question for me right now is, what are you going to do in the summer? This is my first summer where I don't have to train and be in the gym 5 hours a day. So to be honest, I think learning how to just set my work down. Like I said, scrolling. I mean, yes, sure, I like to be on Instagram and see what people are posting, but then I end up thinking of work. I think of how I can make this video, how I can have that outreach. So in that sense, I'm still learning to this day. And I think journaling has been huge for me. I was always a big journaler when I played, and visualization as well. But yeah, learning how to take care of myself is an ongoing challenge.
I feel that. Anyone in the room feel that? Yeah.
If it's not, please come.
Please help us help ourselves. Well, it's so funny because I'm thinking about the tools that, young people have nowadays, even though the extra pressures of, like we said, social media and everything. It's almost like we couldn't really talk about it when I was growing up. We're in an era right now where people are talking about mental health, especially. And yeah, I'm wondering if there are some moments that were especially tough on your mental health where, whether it's like community picking you up or, a sibling, a friend, like who are your support and how do you battle through hard stuff like that?
Yeah, I think my boyfriend, my significant other, is a huge aspect of that. He's one of those guys that's just always positive. He was a quarterback, so it's like his job to just give positive feedback all the time, which is great sometimes. But at the same time, I think I lean on my friends. Yeah. I think I get in the habit of not contacting them, especially I'm in this adult world now where you don't get to see them in college and every day and whatnot. So you actually have to make the effort to reach out and plan something. And even if it's a 5-minute FaceTime call, I've noticed how much those things help me. So taking a step back, but I mean, being manager of DEI, I mean, I have to see and hear and, have these complaints all the time, and it does weigh on you. especially hearing stories from my mentees as well. So I think taking a step back and just putting everything down is a big focus of mine lately.
Yeah, because triggers will come up for you from growing up, I imagine, as well. What about fun? What do you like to do for fun outside? And if your answer is sports, that's also okay. But I feel like, what do we need to know about Saroya Tinker when she is not broadcasting or on the ice?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously still love to work out. I mean, spin class is huge for me, but I love to paint, actually. So I mean, I don't have many followers on that account, but I do have
she has a paint account.
I do have an account for my painting. I like to paint different nude body figures, just all shapes, all shades, all sizes. And oil paint is my medium. So that's what I like to do. That kind of calms me down. And it is a form of self-care too, now that you say that.
For sure. Did you pick up like any painting or anything like that while you were at Yale?
Actually, growing up, my mom is a very good artist. She would never admit that she is, but I grew up kind of seeing her paintings around the house, and we would always go to art classes together. I actually won the art award in high school and just always loved art.
She played every sport and won the art. This is the student you don't want to be in class.
But yeah, I just never had time to focus on my art. But once COVID hit and I was stuck at home, I started painting again. So I do paint and sell my art and sell prints and stuff like that. But it's definitely a side hustle.
Okay, music. I need to know about music. I have a big past in my career in music. Who are your favorite artists? Is there? I'm sure now that I feel like things have leveled up significantly in the last few years. You've probably met some of your heroes.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, I think Lauryn Hill is always my go-to. Yeah. I'm definitely an old soul. My mom grew up listening to Lauryn Hill. I think now I like Georgia Smith, Ella Mai. I mean, I'm a big R&B girl, so anything along those lines.
Who have you met?
Jeez.
I feel like there's got to be a story there.
I don't know about in music, maybe in sport.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Actually, I think not LeBron James, but if you know Maverick Carter, who's LeBron's right-hand man, he is so fascinating to talk to. And actually, when I met him, he asked me, he said, "What did you write your thesis on at Yale?" And I told him.
And he already knew you were at, he knew your whole story.
Yeah, he knew who I was, or to that extent anyways, and he asked if he could read it. And I sent him my 67-page Yale thesis, and he read it, and he got back to me, actually.
What did he say?
He said that I was incredibly smart and have a very bright future, that he loved reading it. He pointed out some specific pieces, because I was like, you didn't read that.
What was the thesis on?
It was about body image and the black female athlete and the stereotypes that have been placed on us and how that affects us to today. And then Maverick actually bought one of my paintings. So he has one of his paintings.
Full circle.
Yes, in his house in LA. So.
Oh my God, cool. Yes. Okay, travel. I feel like you're on a plane every other day.
Yeah.
Do I have that right? Am I picking up?
I just got back from Minnesota.
Okay. So is there like a spot that you're dying to go to, whether it has anything to do with hockey, travel, like, what's on the bucket list?
Yeah, actually, so I have a show on TSN called Breaking Down Barriers, where we talk about individuals and organizations changing hockey culture. Last year in April, we went to Nunavut.
I've been there.
And it was super cool. And this August, we're trying to go to Kenya. There's one ice rink in Kenya. So we're trying to meet all the Kenyan Ice Lions players and go and figure out their way of life and see everything out there for the show. But I'm excited to go to Kenya for sure, especially for hockey. So
yeah, that's so wild to even think of. I couldn't even picture an ice rink in the middle of Kenya. But hey, what do I know, right?
Yeah.
What are your favorite Toronto things to do?
Eat.
Okay. You got some faves you want to share with us?
I love Miss Licklemore's and Chubby's. Those are like my go-to.
Amazing.
I would say those are my two go-to in the city. Like I'm at Chubby's all the time.
Do you cook at all?
Yes, all the time.
Okay. Favorites? Tell us.
My boyfriend loves salmon. So salmon's always on the menu at least once a week.
Good protein.
Yeah.
Athletes, you get it, right? Yeah. And is dating a guy who has an athletic past easier or harder, would you say?
I think ultimately easier, because we have like the same competitive nature, but at the same time then you apply that into your relationship, and you shouldn't compete in your relationship So I've been told.
What's something you guys ended up competing on?
I mean, we played tennis together yesterday, and he said he'd buy me a bag if I won. And
all right.
I was winning literally until the last point, so it's fine.
Do we have any questions from the crowd?
So the question is, what challenges do I face doing EDI work? And do I ever feel like it's redundant or they make you do just enough to say they're doing enough? And I think I'm struggling with that right now. I mean, specifically in hockey, I think hockey has never really been an inclusive sport. So with the PWHL, we're building right from the start. So I think I have a bit of an advantage in the DEI space just because we're building it right from the start, and I get to put in my voice. But I think diversity, equity, inclusion, I think it's something that people of color and of BIPOC individuals, they don't necessarily have to think of that on a daily basis because that is just their life. And what I've realized is that there's still that 35% that just doesn't think of that, and you have to ask those questions. So in that sense, I think right now it's pushing people to actually do it, and not just say we're going to do it. I think you actually have to put it into action. But again, getting people to do it is another story. So I think PWHL wise, I'm definitely have the benefit of the doubt because we're able to put those voices in from the start. But at the same time, hockey repeats itself, and we want to act as the NHL, but we can't because our fan base is much different, and it will gravely affect ours if we don't include the people we need to include. So in that sense, I think it's just pushing people to actually do it, because I think all of our ideas are out there on the table. It's just putting them into work and showing them that it's a necessity.
I'm going to piggyback off your question. Thank you. Great question. There's probably a lot of comparison to, like, you know, the men's leagues, right? There was a time where, you know, even, I mean, we're talking about all the different layers of your experience, but there was a time where just like all women would never be caught playing hockey, right? So I'm wondering what happens in the circles or the rooms where there are guys from the NHL around or those other leagues, and can you think of a specific time someone really like stuck their neck out for you?
Yeah, I think, I mean, one example is Liz Knox. I mean, I announced my retirement and I had the offer to be on panel for the league. I never anticipated being manager of diversity, equity, inclusion. Yeah. So I was hired to be in broadcast for the PWHL first, and Liz Knox contacted Jane and was like, hey, Saroya's voice is way too important for her to just not be in this space anymore, even just on TV. So, I mean, for Liz to reach out and say that she felt my voice was needed, and Liz is a white woman, I mean, was huge for me in itself. But I think even accepting this role, I mean, if you know Kim Davis of the NHL, I mean, anytime a new rule comes into play or a new policy comes into play for the NHL, Kim is the one that they put up in the forefront, and she receives a lot of hate, a lot of complaints, a lot of emails, and I'm aware that that's me now in the PWHL. So as much as I expect that to come, our fan base is much more inclusive and diverse than the men's side, which is why we have to implement these policies as soon as possible, which I'm pushing for. But at the same time, it was huge for even Liz to put her neck out there and be like, you need to hire Saroya.
Do you also think that there's like one challenge that is the most important right now? Like, what's at the top of the list?
I think creating policy for us right now as the PWHL. I think figuring out what our player inclusion policy is going to be moving forward, and what our policy is just in regard to abusive language, race discrimination, diversity, equity, inclusion, all of those things. Is it a zero tolerance policy, which that's what I think should be.
You're like writing it literally right now.
So that's what I'm pushing for. But like you said, you're not always heard, or they don't think it's as important as it really is. But I think the PWHL right now is definitely feeling it from its fans in terms of the policies that we need to put into play moving forward.
And how can people better support women's sports in general, right? Like, you know, whether we're talking hockey or like the Caitlin Clark story was a big one, you know, now it's on the fans to watch, to make sure they're watching, like, for viewership to go up. Is it buying the jersey? Is it What do you think is the most impactful?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you're not involved in sport and you want to see a game, I mean, definitely get out and at least see one game.
Yeah.
But on the other end, it's how we're talking about sport as women. I mean, for myself, no one really ever asked me. It's usually, oh, you played field hockey, not ice hockey when they ask me. But it's, do you want to dance? Do you want to do gymnastics? And I mean, in that sense, those sports are great, but at the same time, put a basketball in her hands, put some hockey skates on her. I think when young girls are offered the chance to play a sport where you get to hit someone, they're usually up for it.
Oh, yeah.
So in that sense, I think it's introducing girls at all levels, all ages to sport in general, no matter what the sport it may be. If they don't like one, let's try another one.
Badminton, soccer. Again, ask her what she did and play. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question, just so we have it on the recording, is college sports are at a completely different level in the U.S. than in Canada. So what can we do here in Canada?
Yeah, I think that comes a lot from government funding. I mean, we need the sport. And I mean, I think if the government was aware of all the amazing athletes that they're missing out on, I mean, we could have a whole aspect to college sports ourselves and have that whole atmosphere that the U.S. has. But government funding, honestly, that's the answer. But I think as women's sports continue on, I think it'll push them to want to keep their athletes here just because there'll be more athletes in general, not just on the male side. So I definitely see the investment coming in women's sports, but it should come in women's sports, specifically in Canada, sometime soon.
It kind of reminds me of the music industry in a sense, right? Like we have so many great Canadians that like went to the US to make it big because they couldn't find support here, and it's kind of the same, a little bit of the same situation with our Canadian athletes. Great question, and thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Yes. Did I have any troubles in my menstrual cycle as a female athlete, and did I receive any help along the way from coaches or mentors?
With weight fluctuations.
Yes, okay. With weight fluctuations. So no, I definitely didn't receive any support from coaches along the way. I believe I got my period really late. I think I was 16.
Oh, wow.
The doctor thought something was wrong with me, but again, just high testosterone levels. But it is huge, and I think that's something that women's sports does need to focus on, just even in our training phases. I know for myself, it affects your performance, it affects everything, whether you're having cramps or not, it just is the truth. So,
or headaches or whatever it is that you get, it affects your day.
Exactly.
Right?
So, and I mean, even in college, we would have to weigh in before practice, which I think is definitely not beneficial. I think on the men's side, yes, sure, and football, I guess. But we were made to weigh in before every practice, every game, weigh in afterwards so that they knew. And obviously it's for their knowledge for, how much water we lost and things like that. But for me, my trainer in college knew that I had this dysmorphia, and he said, okay, Tink, turn around. Hop on the scale, turn around. But at the same time, I'm sure there were other girls struggling as well that weren't okay to speak up and tell them I don't want to see my weight every day. But yeah, I think that's an area specifically in women's sport. We talked at the ESPNW Summit about how we talk about this in our dressing rooms and educate our female athletes moving forward. But definitely something that needs to be focused on more heavily.
We're starting to hear, women talk about perimenopause and all of these different things, kind of like it feels like a new era right now. So that was such a great question. Thank you. And lots of room for improvement. Do we have any other questions before we wrap? Okay, this is great. Yes. Erica's asking, with the WNBA coming to Coca-Cola Coliseum and the PWHL also using the facility, if there might be room for improvement and or collaboration.
Most definitely. I think that's the most exciting piece for the PWHL, to hear that the WNBA is going to be using Coca-Cola, because if I'm being completely transparent, that was our issue this year in playoffs. We wanted to play at Scotiabank. We wanted to play at Coca-Cola, but it's okay. Let's wait and see what the Leafs do. And to be honest, even at Scotiabank,
I'll tell you what the Leafs are going to do. They do the same thing every year. Sorry.
Exactly. So
I'm fine, I swear.
So I think leasing and, I mean, the fact that PWHL also isn't an MLSE owned team, I think that'll open up a door, especially because I don't expect the WNBA to be owned by MLSE either. So in that sense, I think it opens up a big door for us. But I think it also shows the men's sports in this city that we're here and we can fill up the Coliseum just like you can. We saw it during PWHL playoffs. I mean, we saw the sold out arena for Scotiabank when WNBA was here. So I think it's a great opportunity for PWHL, and we were super excited when we saw that press release.
Last question. I saw one more hand up here. Yeah. So in summary, on and off the ice, how do you enforce your boundaries and not get pushed into a tiny little women's box all the time? Thank you, Jennifer.
I mean, I think the first area is, I would say, speak my mind. I think when you're clear and concise and to the point, I think it often allows men to kind of back up a bit because you can tell them that you know what you're talking about. But I think I'm learning how to set those boundaries. I think as an athlete, it's one thing. I think that's you're not good enough. Like, I can beat you. That's the type. But I think moving into media and stuff now, I think those are different type of boundaries that you have to set. So, but so far, I think being stern and being to the point has been my go-to. But I know there's going to be many more barriers that I'm going to face.
Can we also just give women athletes a round of applause for showing up for the interview the way that you do? It's not like, you know what the men hockey interviews are. It's the same every time. So thank you. Okay. So in closing here, if once upon a time Yale and going to an Ivy League school was the dream, what's the next dream?
Oh, geez. I think my next dream is to be one of the leading and known faces in women's hockey, even not being on the ice.
In broadcast.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Love that. Okay. And last but not least, the way that I end the Women in Media podcast, who are a couple women that you admire in media, in sport, that you think have a great story to tell on this podcast that you would sort of nominate to come on?
Well, I think my go-to, I've learned a lot from Kayla Gray. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Kayla.
She's been on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can go listen to that episode. Cool.
But Kayla has been amazing in supporting me. But I think Savannah Hamilton as well. She is with Sportsnet right now, doing similar things to Kayla, but seeing other Black women in broadcasting and making their names known is always encouraging.
Very cool. Big round of applause for Saroya Tinker. A big thank you to Knix and Monday Girl for bringing their communities together for a special Women in Media podcast live tape. I hope to do more of those in the future. And let me know if you like this episode. Let me know if you like the live tape feel. I'm so curious to how it lands with you. Next episode, dare I admit, I think I'm going to put this on the record so that I have to do it. I am going to share an experience where I felt personally victimized by ChatGPT and the spiral of emotions that followed as someone working in an industry that does have to embrace certain elements of AI as we move forward. There, I said it. I guess I have to do it now. Talk to you next episode. Goodbye.